The Frogs leave no doubt in Albuquerque. They dominate Louisiana in the New Mexico Bowl.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. TCU is 9-4. They defeat Louisiana 34-3 in the New Mexico Bowl, and honestly, the game wasn't really that close. TCU took a 34-0 lead early in the third quarter on a Blake Knoll touchdown, and then they kind of took their foot off the gas. Josh Hoover is your single-season passing record holder for yardage. He ended up, I believe, with 3,949 on the day, 20 of 32, 252, 4 touchdowns, did have 1 interception, but was really efficient in the first half and did a very nice job today. Offense looked very crisp through the first 30 minutes. Things got a little out of sync in the second half. They were also trying to milk some clock and run down the clock itself. But I think my biggest takeaway, and I want to get to something that is an issue with this team, where they're at right now, and also just what the offseason will look like. But we start with the fact that I'll give Sonny Dykes and this coaching staff credit again. This team was ready to play. The big question going into this ball game, Ben Woolridge, the Louisiana quarterback, he was back. He was a Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. So on paper, that seemed to make things a little more interesting. But bottom line was, regardless of what personnel Louisiana was putting out there, how focused was TCU going to be? Were they going to be ready to play? Would they be disappointed in the draw that they got, both the location and the opponent, or would they have their heads on straight and be ready to rock and roll? They jumped out to a 14-0 lead. They really never looked back. Honestly, the result was never in doubt. And they looked like a team that was fired up and ready to play, which has been the story of the second half of the season. Honestly, since that Houston game and that bye week, it has not been an effort and enthusiasm issue like we saw for a solid year and a half, going 5-7 and 3-3 in the first half of this year. But go 5-1 down the stretch in the regular season. They won today. And so I give credit to this coaching staff again for doing that. I didn't really think there was an excuse or a reason as to why they shouldn't show up, because while I understand from a fan perspective, okay, not your first choice in destination, not your first choice in opponent. Bottom line is, there are some guys on this roster that played in that national title game and played in a playoff game and won it. And there's also a number of players that weren't really contributors on the field for that team, but they were on the roster and they were contributors in practice and things of that nature. But over the past 2 years, just to be frank and real about it, this program has not lived up to expectations. They have not done anything really special. Now, I think they did a great job of turning the season around, and they continued that today. But I didn't really feel like the players were in a place where they could thumb their nose at this opportunity to go play one more time. And it wasn't like they had a ton of opt-outs. Jack Bech and Savion Williams, very important players. Jack Bech was a huge part of the passing game. So was Savion Williams, and then he became their de facto running game as well. But even with both those guys out, you should have an advantage on the outside. Eric McAllister looked really good today. That was one of my big takeaways. But the team as a whole, they were motivated, they were focused, they executed what they're supposed to do. And my goodness, defensively, Andy Avalos had that Louisiana defense in jail pretty much the whole day. On the first drive of the game, they get a deep pass play on a third down. They have 1st and 10 in plus territory. They get 8 more yards. They have a 4th and 2, and they trot out their kicker for, I think it was a 53 or 54-yard field goal, and he misses it. And that was one of their most promising drives of the day. They were relentless in pressure on Woolridge. Louisiana's running game, which has been very effective all season long. Their leading rusher was Zylan Perry, 11 carries for 49 yards. Overall, 114 as a team, only 3.5 yards per carry on average. They had 3 sacks today. Caleb Alarm-Zor had a sack. Devin Deal had a sack. Austin Jordan came on a blitz in the second half and was just a free runner and had a sack. They had a lot of quarterback hurries. once again, against the run game, did a very good job, played well. Devin Deal was your defensive MVP, but that was the most complete game on defense I think they played all year. You could throw out, I guess, the Long Island game too, but this was the most complete game in my mind they played on defense all season long. They had a really good second half against Stanford, had a good performance against Oklahoma State, especially in the first half. But we've seen some weeks where they've had good halves, a good stretch run of a quarter or two where they played well. This was 4 quarters of just lighting the other team up. And it's coming on the heels of a Cincinnati game that I think I didn't give them a ton of credit for that, not because I didn't think they played poorly, but the weather was a huge factor. And so TCU's offense really struggled as well. I guess in my mind, I just kind of thought, okay, conditions made that an ugly football game. Weather was perfect today. And this is a Louisiana offense that when they've been at full strength, which they pretty much were this afternoon, they've been super effective, and they were not effective in this ball game, even when it was 20-0, 27-0. And TCU's offense kind of went through a lull in the second half, went through a lull through most of the through a lot of the second quarter as well. And the defense kept stepping up and making plays. So great focus and intensity, a really good performance defensively by this team. I feel like you're seeing the continuity and just the week in and week out practice that the defense has gotten, and it's starting to pay off. And also a super efficient game from Josh Hoover. You know, first drive, they go down. They had a 3rd and 4. He hits Drake Dabney on a little crossing pattern for a first down. Then he goes to Dabney again for a long gain. They keep getting down the field. Hits Eric McAllister on a 3rd down play. And then they had an interesting – Kendall Briles had an interesting play call where they go play action. Hoover rolls out, and it looked like he probably could have walked in himself, but DJ Rogers, the other tight end, was in front of him, and he just sort of shoveled the ball to Rogers for an easy touchdown. And second drive of the ball game, they're moving down the field again, throwing the ball. They get in a goal line situation. They can't punch the ball in on the ground, which I'll talk more about the running game in a minute. But they used Nate Palmer in the Wildcat a couple times. That didn't work. They went traditional, like, hey, let's just hand it off to the running back. That wasn't working. 4th and goal from the 1. And they motioned J.P. Richardson from left to right in the formation. They were trying to get J.P. on just a little out route where he's running across the goal line and Hoover's rolling to his side. That's not there. Eric McAllister, who's also running a route and kind of a flood concept, that same direction, that's not there. Hoover's getting pressured, and he just keeps it alive. He keeps moving his feet. He backpedals, runs backwards, reverses field, and finally around the 20-yard line, off balance, dude in his face hitting him. He lofts one up, and it was a great throw to Eric McAllister that he caught in the back of the end zone for a touchdown, and that put them up 14-0. And that was a huge moment in that game, because if Louisiana gets a stop there, I don't know if they go down and score. They would have been in a horrible field position, but it would have been a big momentum swing. But instead, TCU able to go up 2 scores within 2 drives, and it sort of set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. But that was also an important play, because we talk about Josh Hoover a lot in his lack of mobility. And in the context of, well, he's not going to beat you with his feet, running the ball in zone read concepts, and even just quarterback scramble drill when there's nothing there. It seems like he doesn't have a great feel, or he's just kind of unwilling to tuck the ball and run at times when there's some clear yardage in front of him. But making a play off schedule like that, like making something out of nothing, is also something that we haven't seen a lot from Josh. He functions really well within the structure of the offense, and I think he understands that, and he does it at a high level. But even if his mobility does not improve from the standpoint of getting 20 yards on a scramble or something like that, if he can get better at just moving outside the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield, and making things happen that way, that would also be a big boost for this offense. So it doesn't just have to be tucking the ball and running. It can be just making plays like he did today. If he can do that more often, that would be a huge boost to an offense that's already humming really well. Eric McAllister looked good today. He did a fantastic job. His final line, 8 catches for 87 yards. Really only played the first half. Drake Dabney, 3 for 73. JP Richardson, 5 for 53. JP had a touchdown right before halftime. That was a big moment. They're up 20-0, had a 4th and 2. They throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage to JP on a screen. He's able to weave his way in the end zone. That puts them up 27-0 at halftime, which made a big difference, and I think basically put the game away. Josh hits Blake Knoll on a touchdown pass early in the third quarter, and that was the last time TCU scored, but the defense kept that intensity up. Caleb Alarmzor at linebacker looked really good today. That was great to see because he's going to be asked to be your main dude at middle linebacker this next season. So he was active. He had a sack. He had 8 total tackles. Really good performance by him. Overall defense just played outstanding ball. Devin Deal was your defensive MVP. As I said earlier, they had 3 sacks, a lot of tackles for loss, put Louisiana in uncomfortable situations all day long. So all around, great performance. They get the victory. Josh Hoover breaks the single-season yardage passing record, passes Max Duggan and Trayvon Boykin to set that mark. And some other things that I saw that I liked, Nate Palmer, the numbers don't look fantastic. He ended up with 10 carries for 30 yards. Jeremy Payne had 9 carries for 33. Trent Battle had 9 for 42. But Nate looked good, bouncing off tackles, creating space, getting some extra yardage. He just looked active and healthy today, which was good to see. Trent Battle had 42 yards. He was your leading rusher. 24 of those yards were on one run. So it wasn't super consistent. And when we come back, I'm going to get into my one big gripe from this ball game and sort of what I think it means for this team moving forward. And it's the lack of TCU's ability to run the ball. That's coming up here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. You open up your bank account and you think, man, where is my money going? Why do I always feel like I have less money than I should? Those subscriptions, man, that you just forget about or that you're paying for twice. It can happen. It happens to me. I mean, my YouTube premium subscription, which it's pretty useful for me, but I did a free trial, right? And I'm like, oh, I'll cancel that. And I didn't cancel that. It just renewed automatically. And so now I'm suddenly paying for it. Zoom, like once a month, I see the email that I got charged for Zoom, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to cancel my Zoom membership. You get it. It's tough. It's tough to keep up with the stuff. They hide it from you at times. They can make it not easy to see. So Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel and find unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so you can grow into savings. It brings everything in one place. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, and it saved people a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when you use all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Give it a try today. Get rid of those unwanted and unused subscriptions. So great performance all around by TCU. But one aspect of this game that was intriguing, and it sort of changed in the middle of bowl practice. Savion Williams, we kind of had the idea that he probably wasn't going to play. I don't know when that decision was officially made. Sonny Dykes said about a week before the bowl game he's not going to play. Haas Haney was somebody who they thought could take on that role that Savion stepped into in the second half of the season as a Wildcat quarterback, but then Haas Haney hits the transfer portal, and suddenly you don't really have that option. They did use Nate Palmer a little bit in the Wildcat today. However, it's sort of, I mean, it was kind of a blessing in some ways. Not that Haas moved on, but okay, he won't be available for the bowl game. Now we'll get to use some of these young backs and see what they can do. Louisiana coming into this game, not good against the run. Their defense really struggled giving up rushing yardage. Frogs shuffling some things around on the offensive line. Ryan Hughes, a young player who played some tackle through this year. He slides to guard. They slide Colton Deary to center because James Brockermeyer left for the portal. Ben Taylor Whitfield and Bless Harris were your tackles for the majority of the game. So those are your linemen, right? And it felt like this was a week where this team should be able to get some push and run the ball more consistently. Well, that wasn't the case. They had 110 yards rushing. They averaged 3.3 yards per carry. Their leading rusher was Trent Battle with 9 carries for 42 yards. But like I said in the last segment, 24 of those yards were on one run. Jordan Bailey, 1 for 9. Nate Palmer, 10 for 30. Jeremy Payne, 9 for 33. They just were not effective running the ball. As a whole, they weren't, but then also situationally. Had, first and goal down near the 2-yard line, could not punch it in on the ground, finally had to throw the ball on 4th and goal. 4th and 2 right before halftime, and they had such little faith in their run game, they decided to spread it out, throw a screen pass to J.P. Richardson, and to Kendall Brown's credit, it worked. He weaves his way for a touchdown, but you're not able to run the ball against Louisiana. That's not great news. And Andy Swain, who listens to the show, he reached out to me on Twitter because I said something in the second quarter. I was like, offense has sort of lost its focus. It felt sloppy. They had a few empty possessions. And if there's one thing that I can say, I thought Kendall did an outstanding job this past year. But it's impossible to quantify. And it's difficult to say, well, this is the issue or this is the thing that's happening. The offense just kind of goes in lulls sometimes. It's like there's just empty possessions. There's possessions where you're like, what was the plan there? What were they even doing? And I think that's a lot on the players. But they just have those moments where you're like, man, that was 2 or 3 chances in a row to go score that you just sort of squandered there. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that they just can't run the ball. And Andy said, listen, it's so frustrating. They have to find a way to fix this. And I agree. Like, I hate to belabor the point, but if they could run the ball effectively, they'd be 10-2 right now. If they could run the ball effectively, they would have won that UCF game. They would have held on to that lead. They would have been able to milk the clock, win that ball game. I think there's a really good chance they could have won the Houston game, even though they were dominated in some ways. So much of that game, the reason it played out that way was Willie Fritz said, you can't run the ball. And I'm going to drop 8 and 9 guys back in coverage. I'm going to dare you to run the ball against me. I'm not going to allow you to do all that short game stuff, that quick game stuff, RPO, screen patterns. That's not going to happen tonight. You're going to have to earn these yards on the ground or in the vertical passing game. And TCU just simply couldn't really do that. So I think there's a good chance they're 10-2 or I guess 11-2 with a bowl win, depending on where they would have ended up if they could just run the ball. And the Savion Williams experiment was great, and I'm glad it worked out, but it didn't really solve the issue at hand because he's leaving next year, and you're still not able to run the ball effectively in the traditional way. So I think for this coaching staff, there has to be more urgency. And I know there's multiple factors. I think, we've talked about scheme. They do seem to run the ball well with the pistol formation. Today you're shuffling around your line again, but I got to be honest, Ben Taylor Whitfield had a rough day. Ryan Hughes had a rough day, and I know they're young, and you kind of expect that to a certain extent. They're going to have an off season to grow and develop and get better, but right this minute, they don't look like they're ready to step up and be cornerstone starting offensive linemen. So they need to go get a tackle in the portal. And I know they went and got Rashid Jackson, and I like that pickup. I think for the future, over the next few years, he's going to be a factor. I don't feel like he's going to be a factor right now, though. And TCU needs help right now. It's a combination of things. I feel like they need to adjust their scheme a little bit. They need to get better at fundamentals on the O-line. But to me, it comes back to you have to be able to maul people. Like when it's 2nd and goal at the 2 and everybody in the building knows you're going to run, you have to run and do it well. And part of that's getting better up front. Part of that is, the tight end spot this year, Drake Dabney had a nice day today, but man, he struggles in the inline blocking game. And Kamorian Pimpton, who I really like that they picked up in the portal, sort of has a similar story. Athletic, big matchup problem, but not really known for bringing that physicality at the point of attack. So you got to fix this. Has to be one of the big challenges for TCU this offseason is finding a way to get better up front and finding a way to run the ball. Because if they can't do that and they roll in here with a one-dimensional offense, I'll give you a hot take. I hope Josh Hoover does not break his record next year, his single-season yardage record. And I hope that he doesn't because they have more balance and they're able to run the ball more effectively. And he's still putting up good numbers and doing great things. But he's part of a balanced offense that can run the ball on 1st and 2nd down and in short yardage situations. We'll wrap things up when we come back. It's Locked on Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. FanDuel, it's where the game starts. I love FanDuel, man. And right now, NFL season's going on. You want to close the NFL season strong before the playoffs start. Place one $5 bet at FanDuel.com or on the FanDuel app and get up to $250 in bonus bets if you win that bet. That's right. One $5 bet. Win that bet, get up to $250 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. FanDuel, they make it easy for you. There's live in-game betting on NFL games. It's very simple. Give it a try today. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. One winning $5 bet gets you $250 in bonus bets. Check out FanDuel today. Well, it's kind of sad, friends. We're at the end of the TCU football season. I saw Chris Kleiman talking after the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Not the Pop-Tarts Bowl, excuse me. They played in that last year. After the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. They beat Rutgers. They got off to a rough start. They end up winning the ball game, coming back. They get to 9 wins. They finish the season 9-4 as well. And Chris was asked if this season was a disappointment. K-State was picked 2nd in the Big 12 preseason poll. They were a trendy, Big 12 championship pick. And Chris gave a pretty impassionate answer. I don't think that's the right word. He gave a pretty passionate answer, I should say. And he's basically like, listen, if we're at a place where 9 wins is not acceptable, then I don't think that's good for college football, or college football's really changed. Basically, he's saying, look, it's hard to win games. We should get more respect for what we did. And I saw that and I thought to myself, one really interesting thing about this new league with Texas and OU leaving, it feels like just about everyone left over thinks they should win 10-plus games every other year. And I'm not saying it's wrong or unfair to have that expectation. I think TCU should have high expectations. But I feel like when you go through a season like this, that you saw some really good things, but you also left meat on the bone. You can look at it 2 ways. You can say, man, what a missed opportunity that we had. Or you could say, you know what, maybe this team just kind of figured it out as the year went on. And they've still got flaws, and they've still got things they need to work on going into the offseason. But they got tougher. They cleaned up the penalties. They cleaned up the turnovers. Defense improved. And yes, the schedule is the schedule. But I don't think through the first half of the season this team could have gone on the road and beaten Cincinnati. I don't think they would have won at home against Texas Tech. I'm not sure they would have played Baylor as competitively as they did. They improved. They got better. Now, I'm not saying you have to be satisfied with it, but I think there's something to build on here. The key is, though, you got to do it. And we're going to talk plenty about that this offseason. We'll also talk a lot about TCU basketball. It's Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.